Hello and welcome to this week's Wellness, Wealth and Mindset Weekly, personal lessons and experiences from our past week. So let's deep dive into this week's episode. So health-wise this week, it's been quite an interesting one as I ended up in hospital. So if you follow me on social media, you might have seen my post related to my experience of choking on a walnut and the lessons I learned from that episode. Eventually, everything was okay, but if we go back on the backstory, basically I was having breakfast and I have some walnuts in my breakfast, and that made me choke. I choked on a walnut while I was consuming my porridge. Managed to get most of it out, but there was a bit stuck in my esophagus, which ended up meaning I had to go to hospital, had to be put under anaesthetic to go to sleep and have that removed safely overnight. And all fitting well now, just more mindful obviously of walnuts and chewing my food more efficiently. But in terms of health, what really touched me during this whole process was the importance of health prior to an episode like this, because these things we don't plan for. We don't plan for the unexpected. However, being healthy and fit will allow you to cope with these things much better. When I was in hospital, the nurses pointed out that I'm the fittest person they've seen all week. When I came back from being asleep having the operation, I wasn't on any oxygen, and normally that is the case when you get wheeled back to a recovery unit. And throughout the whole process, my heart rate was really low and my resting blood pressure was really low as well, nice and stable. So I was in a really good place, a really comfortable place during the whole process. So I think it's a real important message this week that being healthy, not just to look a certain way or to achieve a certain goal, whether it is a marathon or a cycling event, for example, but just being healthy to cope with the stresses of life. And that's not just going to work and experience the stresses that you might experience day to day, but the experiences of what happens if you get injured and you have to go to hospital, or you're involved in an accident and you go to hospital, or what happened to me. This is an accident that happened that needed surgery, that I needed to go to hospital for. However, I was more resilient to cope with the pressures that I was going to be experiencing based on how I've been looking after myself over my 40 years on this planet. And I think it's a real important message that you're not just being fit for now, you're being fit for those unexpected events that might happen, because the fitter you are, the more resilient your body is going to be when it's going to have to cope with the demands of going through something that's quite traumatizing for the body. Being put to sleep is unnatural, and having a pipe down your esophagus and having some autopsies taken from my esophagus is not natural. So how my body's going to recover and get better from that will be dependent on my physical state of fitness prior to that episode. So because I've looked after myself, that has been recovery's been really efficient. I was pretty tired the next day, but 2 or 3 good nights sleep and I was back feeling my best on holiday, doing some nice hikes and feeling at my best again. So I think it's really important that you really focus on the health, not just for now, but for those unexpected events in the future, because you never know what's around the corner. And if you're, they say, if you fail to prepare, you're prepared to fail. So being prepared for the unexpected is certainly going to make life a little bit easier to cope with going forward. In terms of wealth this week, it's another kind of aspect related to the experience that I had in hospital, because I am a self-employed individual. I make my money by being a consultant for businesses and my own business. And this episode meant that I lost out on 2 days' work. However, I wasn't as anxious about this because what I've discussed in the past is multiple sources of income, and having also some money saved that you can rely on when these things happen. I have no insurance in terms of they're going to pay me when I'm off sick. So all these factors are really important to understand when it comes to wealth, because if you're relying on one source of income, this issue might be a little bit more stressful for myself or an individual if that was the case. However, my health is the most important factor in my life. Obviously, it's the most important factor for us all, and I can always do more work afterwards. However, these 2 days I missed out on work. One, too much of a stress for me because I have some savings saved up and I have some other sources of income that can support me as well. So overall, I wasn't too stressed. I was more frustrated with myself that this has happened because it was pretty much self-inflicted. So I was more angry that I couldn't go to work. However, wealth-wise, I was a little bit more relaxed because I've built up a good nest egg to kind of support myself a little bit easier during tougher times. And that doesn't have to be losing your job, but just little factors like this where you might not be able to work for a couple of days if you are self-employed, if you've got your own business where you rely on you turning up every day in order to bring in the money. What happens when you can't turn up and you have to rely on other sources of income to support you? So trying to have a diversified portfolio of generation of income where you can generate income is definitely going to be a safer bet for you in the long run. And certainly paying down mortgages and having more savings also going to allow you to be less anxious and stressed about paying bills, etc., going forward when it comes to wealth as well. And finally, this week, when it comes to mindset, again, touching on a topic that I experienced in hospital, is the ability to withstand stresses when it comes to your mindset. So just a little example, I had to go and have an operation many years ago when I cracked my head open playing football, and they just straightened my nose a little bit because I did break my nose and my cartilage within my nose as well. And this was over 10 years ago. And at that time, I probably hadn't done as much mental health training and resilience training to be more resilient for my physical and mental well-being. So being put to sleep as an adult is a very different concept in comparison to being put to sleep when you're a child. And when I was put to sleep as a child, I had a few operations when I was younger, you're really quite detached from the whole process. So you're less anxious about going to sleep. You're just being talked to, someone's telling you a nice story, and you're asleep, and then you wake up and you got family around you. Where when you're an adult, you're a bit more aware of the complications, maybe the risks that go with this. So that can play maybe tricks on your mind as well, even though the risks are very low. So when I was put to sleep over 10 years ago for my operation, I was really anxious going into being put to sleep. I remember trying to almost fight the fact that I was going to be put to sleep. Obviously, that's not the case. I'm not going to be able to win that fight and end up going back to sleep. But I was very anxious in terms of this is not natural. I'm not really comfortable with this. However, we fast forward to this present day when I was put to sleep last week for the operation. I was actually very relaxed. I didn't really feel any anxiety at all. And throughout the whole process, before I got into the operation, I also had a camera down my nose to check any airways, if there was any blockages within my airway. And also they put a camera down my throat as well to see if they could remove it by putting the camera down my throat without having to put me to sleep. But the walnut was too far down in order to safely remove it that way. But in both cases, I had to really be quite resilient to overcome what is quite an uncomfortable process. Having a tube all the way down the back of your nose, back of your throat, where you're gagging quite a lot, is not a natural thing. And the same thing with a camera down your throat, where you're gagging a lot, is not a natural thing. However, the training I've done for my mindset, cold showers, meditation, and just that consistent exposure to a stressful environment consistently, especially with the cold showers, has actually made me more resilient to this discomfort that I experienced when I was in hospital. And during both episodes where I had the camera down my throat, I actually felt quite relaxed. I wasn't really as anxious. I just had the real mindset shift of like, this is going to last a couple minutes and that'll be it. Pain is temporary. It's not going to be forever. I just have to kind of dig deep, and this is going to help me solve the issue of my esophagus and me choking. So it was going to lead to a good outcome, but I had to experience that pain to experience a good outcome. And also when I went to sleep, I was actually really relaxed. I knew everything was going to be okay. The doctors were amazing. Big shout out to people who work in the NHS as well, because everybody that looked after me that day were absolutely amazing, fantastic. So when I went to sleep, I was really relaxed, really comfortable, understood the process, and just went with it. And I think the anxiety I would have had if I hadn't done the mindset training, the cold showers, and building resilience in my mind consistently over the last 3 or 4 years, it would have been more anxiety driven. So I think today's episode, with the theme of me going into hospital and experiencing this unfortunate event, is to really look after your mental well-being and physical well-being, because all of these are going to build resilience and a nice ability for you to cope with these stresses that you do not know are going to be around the corner. And we can all experience them from time to time. We have no control over what's going to happen in the future to a certain extent, but we do control our mindset and things and actions we can take on a day-to-day basis to support our mental and physical well-being. And the better you are at physically, mentally coping with your own physical and mental well-being, the more resilient you're going to be in terms of coping with these kind of episodes. So while it might feel like a lost cause sometimes, because you're not really seeing the benefits early on, over time you're going to see the benefits. And certainly when certain things like this happen, when unexpected things happen that are really quite traumatizing, can be quite challenging, you are going to be a much better person to cope with this resilience, with that issue, because you've built up resilience. You're going to be much more, you have a stronger coping mechanism mentally to cope with these unexpected events. So it really, really helped me overall with the mindset of coping with this unfortunate event. While it was traumatizing and upsetting at times because I was on my own, and then my girlfriend came and supported me later on in the day, overall I think it would have been a lot worse if I hadn't done the mental health training that I've been working on consistently over the last 3 or 4 years. So that is my 2 cents today when it comes to mindset. Definitely really focus on all of this to build resilience mentally and physically to cope with these unexpected events that might happen in the future. So wraps up this week's Wellness, Wealth and Mindset Weekly. Hope you've been enjoying the podcast, the YouTube episodes and the newsletters so far. If you haven't subscribed, head to my website, which will be in the show notes, where you can subscribe for free and get access to this on a weekly basis. And if you haven't left a review, I'm really happy if you would like to leave a review over on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, just to help out the show and get more people to experience it as well. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you again soon.